Hello, everyone. Welcome to another forecast. It's Claire, and we're going to be talking about the astrology of April. So, I guess before I jump into my usual things, hello, everyone. Welcome. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you want to keep up with me. Best way to use this info today, if you are new to astrology, I'm going to need you to go grab your birth chart because that is going to be the most helpful way is to know your own rising sign, ideally. If you don't know your exact birth time, check out my website, www.aligninglightastrology.com. And my frequently asked questions section has some things about what to do if you don't know your birth time. But if you do, and you know your chart, of course, go grab it. Some of us have it burned into our mind at this point, so we don't, we're good. But today I'll be getting specifically into certain signs, what's going on in certain signs. And then with that information, you can relay that back to your own chart. What house topics, what life areas might this astrology be hitting you at more specifically? So that's that. Also, if you in your birth chart for the month of April specifically, I'm going to be talking about retrogrades a lot, retrograde Mercury, retrograde Venus. If you have that in your birth chart, any kind of like fear mongering I do, you don't need as much. I'm not as worried about the people who have retrograde planets in their birth chart. Then usually those retrogrades in transit aren't as big of a deal. So y'all are probably having a fine time, and I'm not worried about you. But that is one little caveat about how best to use this information, depending on your birth chart. There's a lot more where that comes from. Okay, I actually finally wrote down my discount code for the month ahead. Right now, I have a discount code ROOT, ROOT. That's 10% off birth chart readings, all the birth chart readings. And that is going to be valid for another few days until April 1st. And then my discount code for April is for forecasting sessions. And that's going to be 10% off if you use the discount code LEAF, LEAF, like leaf on a tree. I don't even remember what I was thinking about. I think I was just looking out my window when I wrote that one. Alrighty. I think that's, I think those are my big announcements. Um, Lately I've been doing more of a little mindful moment beforehand, and I do something sometimes a little bit more involved, sometimes less. Today I'm gonna do the less and just repeat something before we get into the datey dates and all of the future stuff. Um, I like to ground back into now and remind people, give people a friendly, loving reminder as we look into the future. We can tell the general weather, we can tell the general climate, the general, metaphorically speaking, we can tell the general themes that might arise, that will have a higher probability of arising in the future. We will not be able to tell the specific details all the time, right? Or ever until we get there. So there's always going to be some amount of uncertainty, and uncertainty is rather uncomfortable for the mind. In general, we prefer to know, we prefer to feel certainty. Our brains squirt out happy chemicals when we feel certain. Whether or not we're correct, that's a different question. But astrology, I think, can bring up a lot of that uncertainty. And so when we are in a state of uncertainty, and if it is uncomfortable, which it can be, sometimes there's that sense of restlessness or dis-ease or ick that comes with concern about the future and anticipation of the future. And there's two things that I like to do to bring me back to here and now. And one is to remember that I'm here and I'm here right now. And I remind myself, one, what do I know? What do I know for sure, though? I don't know about this future stuff, but what do I know right now? And remind yourself what we are certain about, at least for the moment. And then number two, what can I do or not do right now that would help? What would be helpful right now for myself, for others, or both? To do or not do. Sometimes not doing is the answer. It depends on the situation. So coming back to now in terms of what do I know? What can I do or not do that would be helpful? That helps me a lot when I'm future tripping, when I'm past tripping, it works both ways. So I'm just going to offer that up for my regular listeners. I know that you've heard me say that a billion times. So you'll hear me say it a billion more than something I say to myself and have said a billion times. All right, I'm gonna go say hi to the people in the lovely chat that's on the right-hand side of your screen. Hello, Jendi, welcome. I'm happy the newsletter was helpful, and thank you for reminding me I have a newsletter. You can sign up for it on my website, www.aligninglightastrology.com, and it is newsletter sign up. It's once a month. It's free. It's my one-stop shop for like all my events that I've done, what I plan to do. If I do any writings, I feed them to you there. And it's usually around the last week of the month that I send that. That's where the discount codes also end up. Yeah, I think those are all my little housekeeping items. Thanks for listening, everyone. Let's get into some datey dates. How about the dates of interest? Which I do have a caveat I'm coming back to on these first 2 points. So on the 1st of April, the 2nd of April, we've got Venus and Mercury getting 15 degrees away from the sun. So actually, let me get the wheel up here. So Venus and Mercury are currently under the beams of the sun. And at the beginning of the month, they're going to get 15 degrees away. So I guess on this, I guess I'm not going to get into the list yet. I'll start with this point. Um, Around the 1st and 2nd of April, these planets are going to get 15 degrees away from the sun, at which point they will be, that's our convention for like when a planet approximately will become visible in the very early morning, right before the sun rises, or in the evening after the sun sets. So that's going to vary, though. The caveat is that it depends on where you live. It depends on the conditions in your sky, the amount of light pollution you have, the amount of pollution you have. Yeah, all kinds of factors. The horizon that you're dealing with. And so for some of us, like right now, I'm recording this, it's March 27th. And for some folks, like they may already be able to see Venus, in the next few days. Who knows? Maybe you already can, because Venus is one of the brightest things in the sky. So Venus especially, it may be before they get to that 15-degree mark. They may only need to be 10, 12, 13 degrees away from the sun. Mercury, on the other hand, is a little more dim. They're not quite as bright as Venus. And so, yeah, I mean, probably 15 degrees. Sometimes it takes more than that. So that's part of why when we're looking, just like a total side note for the nerds in the chat, for the nerds in the room, um, with Hellenistic astrology, they like us to actually look at the week before and the week after birth, like those whole 7 days before and after, because it helps give us that approximate view of what planets were rising and setting out of the beams of the sun, right before your birth, right after your birth. But there is that wiggle room, and so we have more wiggle room, right? Anyway, that's happening. That's how we start the month. Now, symbolically, when planets come out of the beams, when planets become visible, they are doing their stuff more visibly. Venus is doing love, uh, ethics, fairness, art, all much more loudly and out there when they are visible in the sky versus when they're too close to the sun. Mercury, when they are out of the beams, they are talking, listening, speaking, sharing news, planning, giving messages, doing all of that much more loudly and effectively when they're out of the beams. So we're coming into April and we're getting, maybe if March has been kind of this, for me, it's felt like kind of this quiet, soupy mess. It's like a mess, but it's like just kind of sitting there next to me, and there's not like a ton that is happening with it. It's just kind of sitting there. Um, that's what my challenges are, and it's about my student loan debt. P.S. I'll probably mention it at some point today. But yeah, now I expect in April, I expect there to be a bit more movement, a bit more planning, understanding, information, connection, relationship stuff happening, much more in April with those planets becoming visible. Okay, there's that little thing. Now to the rest of the list. Let's see. On the 7th of April, Mercury is stationing direct. On the 12th of April, Venus is stationing direct. We also have on the 12th of April a Libra full moon. On the 16th, Mercury is entering Aries. On the 17th, Mars enters Leo. On the 19th, the Sun is entering Taurus. On the 25th, we get Mercury leaving their post-retrograde time. On the 27th of April, we have Taurus New Moon. And on the 30th of April, we have Venus entering into Aries again, coming back into Aries. So those are our dates of interest. Now, I'm going to throw a few more at you actually before we move on. And these are some three-part stories that have been going on since January. And this is part of my general notes, kind of getting into general thoughts for the month that we're getting out of and the month that we're coming into. Venus and Saturn have been making some interactions, as have Venus and Neptune, Venus and Rahu. We'll talk about Saturn and Rahu. So there's all of these, you know, Neptune, Rahu. There's all these connections of these four planets that are happening in April. They've already started though. These that we're getting to the end. Right now we're in the middle as I record this on March 27th. We're kind of in the middle of this. By the end of April, we will be toward the end of a lot of these interactions between Venus, Saturn, Neptune, Rahu. So just to give some dates on that stuff, and I'm going to flesh that out a bit more at some point. We've got Venus, Saturn conjunctions. So Venus, a planet of love, beauty, relationship, fairness, art. Did I say art? Connection. We know what Venus is. Saturn is serious. They are limiting, constraining, sober, realistic. If we're not careful with Neptune around in Pisces, we can get pessimistic. So when we bring Venus and Saturn together symbolically, we're getting relational themes, relationship stuff that's more serious. We're getting realistic about relationships. The beer goggles are coming off. We're seeing things clearly in relationship. In Pisces, Venus has a lot of resourcing to handle Saturn. So I'm not worried about it. But Venus in Pisces also has this really beautiful vision of the ideal, perfect version of what relationship could be. And Saturn can be that, okay, let's make it real. What do we actually have to do this art or do this relationship or what have you? What are the limitations that we're facing? And those stories really started, so January 18th. That's your first date. The second of these Venus-Saturn conjunctions is on April 7th, so about a week from today. And then at the end of the month, April 24th. So that's Venus and Saturn. Venus and Neptune, we're having the second of three of those today. And this is much more of that, yeah, what are the big visions and what like use of our imagination is happening in regards to relationship, for better or for worse. Imagining the worst things that could happen, imagining the best things that could happen, and in between. So using that imagination, that visioning power that we have right now to like make your vision board, spruce it up. Hope maybe you're already making it because we're in March and April now. And what changes might need to be made now that it's the second time Venus is moving through this vision board, so to speak. That's one cool way that this can come out. Less cool, difficulties around lack of clarity. Relationally, maybe it's unclear where things are headed with an art project. One thing that has fallen off my Venus list that I'm going to put back on is vices. Sometimes Venus comes up as our relationship with vices like alcohol, yum yums. It could be anything, literally anything. If there's, if there's too much of it. Right now, there might be a lack of clarity around how to handle those things. So sometimes that Neptunian lack of clarity, uncertainty, fog around what Venus is trying to do here. Venus is trying to relate, trying to have a healthy relationship with substances, and Neptune can sometimes make those things unclear. So coming back to what's the most helpful thing to do right now or not do? Very good question to help guide at this time. The first of those conjunctions with Venus Neptune, which is like so weird. We've got this like, Saturn, certainty, clarity, Neptune, lack of clarity, lack of certainty. They're both here. Venus is dealing with both of them. So Venus has been dealing with more of the dreamy, imaginal Neptune, also confusing Neptune on February 1st, today, March 27th. And then the last of those will be May 2nd. So, this is where, okay, really at this point, end of March into April, and then the end of April, with relationships, over communicating, doing your best with any potential fog in relational stuff. Um, when it comes to expectations, just being aware of them. It's hard not to have expectations. I think when we get into Pisces and there's Neptune and Saturn there can come up a lot of hopes and fears and expectations. So just being, aware that right now with Rahu and Neptune around, and, I know like just without even astrology, if you're in a number of countries right now, there's a lot of uncertainty going on, and a lack of clarity, which Rahu also does. So, just remember what is really real, what we really know, and let that be kind of an anchor of sorts, if there even is that challenge around uncertainty or lack of clarity right now, and then at the end of April. And then lastly, we've got Venus and Rahu, the North Node. This upside down horseshoe looking symbol here. Um, they like to expand. They increase things that they're around. So they're increasing Venus, increasing Saturn, increasing Neptune. So this is just a very loud, it's just adding amplification to what a lot of this activity in Pisces is. And then Rahu also can be this agent of in that growth or expansion of sometimes cool stuff, sometimes horrors. It can be unwieldy. It can feel overwhelming. So if there's any overwhelm at the end of March into April with especially like topics around Pisces house for you. So for me, that's my second house. So for me, it's around money. And, I've got a potential problem on my hands, depending on what the current administration decides. Uh, if anyone's feeling overwhelmed, I think we all just need to like anchor ourselves. And I'm projecting a little bit, but I can't be the only one, experiencing this because this is happening in different parts of everyone's charts. And one thing that Rahu or the North Node does is sometimes overwhelm. And so if that is the case, know that we might not, excuse me, we might not feel this same level of overwhelm in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks. Well, maybe in 3 weeks because Saturn is still with Rahu. In May, we're probably not going to be feeling the same level of whatever this is. So this is temporary. It's very temporary. We just got to wait for these planets to get away from the North Node, essentially. So that is a bit of me getting into the weeds about what Venus is going to be experiencing with Saturn and Rahu, what Saturn's going to be experiencing. I do get into the weeds with this also in my what was that? I made a video about Venus in Aries and Pisces, which is linked below. And I get into it further, and I also put it toward your rising sign. So check that out. But yeah, a lot of this is building. So, at the end of the month, let me grab my dates. Yeah, at the end of the month, so like April 21st and April 23rd. We're really kind of building up to this third week of April, where the Rahu, the North Node is going to be very active. So we're getting this Venus, Saturn, very realistic, relational kind of set of themes, getting very serious about Venusian topics. And Rahu is here, increasing it, making it like I've heard Austin Coppock talk about Saturn and North Node as a craving for discipline, a craving for having things under control. And Venus is here, and you know they want to embark on this perfect version of something. So, you know, I think one of the messages I can get in terms of what might be a practical way to approach this kind of energy, again, like, yeah, shoot for the stars, you'll at least land on the moon. Don't be too hard on yourself and your others. I think this is a recipe for grand expectations. And these are longer stories that we know are going to be shaking out as planets station direct at the end of April and start to gain speed in May. So don't be too hard on yourself. If you are trying to turn something around with these retrogrades now going into the second part of that journey, if you're embarking on some new exciting things or some new ways of living, give yourself some slack, you know? In Pisces, it's hard to do Saturn. It's hard to have a lot of responsibility weighing on you. So if you've got a lot of responsibility, you know, do your best to not get more, you know, unless you want more. But I think like by the third week of April, we're really going to be feeling the weight of responsibility, the weight of the heaviness of things, the weight of whatever you got going on in Pisces. And so as much as we can set ourselves up for success in those Pisces house topic areas of life, uh, and not be too hard on ourselves. But what comes to mind is a quote that I've put in a lot of my transit reports. If you've gotten a forecasting session with me, I send people a transit report afterwards for the year ahead or for the next 6 months ahead, kind of whatever I have done. But I put a quote in all of them for the Saturn and Pisces time. And it reads, it's from Cory Muscara, and he says, hold yourself with the highest standards and with the greatest compassion. So I think we do the first part. A lot of us don't do the second part. We're like, oh, I should. They should. Not enough compassion, usually. So, which is not the same as complicity or, you know, not accountability. But compassion has patience. It understands. It tries to help, you know. High standards, but don't be too hard on yourself. That's Saturn Rahu really peaking by the third week of April, and then that'll start to dissipate. Is that my last point about it? I think that's my last point about all that. Okay. So again, these are stories that began mid-January with Venus. They have another kind of peaking, fruiting of stuff at the end of March into April, and again in late April into May. So we've got about 1 month left. If you've been following this for a while, I know we've been looking at March and April with side eye for like a year. We're now in it, we're living it, and we have about a month left. So hang in there, everyone. I think May is going to feel a lot different in hopefully a more settled down way. Uh, I think last overall point. So the month starts off with a bit more cardinal and mutable energy. And as the month progresses and we get to the second half of April, we're going to start to get more fixed energy. On April 17th, we're going to get Mars moving into Leo. On April something, we're getting April, what did I say? Ingresses, yeah, April 19th, we get the sun into Taurus. So we're going to have a bit more fixed energy. That usually also speaks to the pace slowing down a little bit, things settling into a shape a bit more at the second half of April, which says the same exact thing as knowing that there are retrograde planets in the first half of April and not the second half. Things kind of shake out, so to speak. We talked about Saturn, Venus, Rahu forever. Uh, oh yeah, and I guess last thing, and then I'm going to talk about Neptune, and then I swear we're going to get into the details. So this last thing about all of this Pisces stuff that's happening this month is that it's in a sextile with Uranus. And Uranus can be breakthroughs, change, sudden shifts. It can also be chaos or, you know, breakdowns in some ways. What is interesting to me is that Saturn and Venus are in the overcoming position. They have more of a strong voice in this pairing than Uranus does. So, in some ways, I think what this is going to be is here's this chaotic assault to whatever your Taurus place is. Here is this chaotic like, disruption or something. Um, I guess that was a strong word that I just used, but it's actually appropriate to my situation. I'm just gonna say it for a second. Like, okay, I'm catastrophizing now, but if like the income-based repayment plans go away in America, I might have to go back to pharmacy because my bills are gonna go from $200 a month for my student loans to $1,400 a month. At worst, at best, $900 a month. So it's either moving in with my parents or going back to pharmacy. Either way, that wall wouldn't be there anymore. We're getting a different wall behind me. That's what's going on in my fourth house. Now, here's my hope is that Saturn and Venus are going to be like able to control this kind of thing, or at least if something is falling down, like kind of, make sure it's not a totally disastrous thing. I feel like they're going to hem this in a bit, provide some kind of assistance or support or stabilization. That's my one hope. My other hope is that they kind of contain Uranus completely and that whatever Uranus is doing in terms of disruptions or interruptions won't have, its ultimate most Uranian effects. Now, a totally different set of delineations I have for this are positive ones, constructive ones. If you're trying to change something, uh, especially in the Taurus or Pisces house topics of your life, this looks like a potent recipe for creating long-term change. So being able to say, yeah, let's do things differently with the Taurus part of my chart. And I'm going to help structure it in this way and kind of in that way, taking that lightning and putting it in a bottle a little bit, that lightning of change, that lightning of transformation that Uranus can do sometimes, even though like it's kind of random. And being able to almost harness that change, harness that disruption in a positive way somehow. So a girl can dream. That's my hope. It looks like a potential opportunity, but if it is going funky for people in their Taurus and Pisces places, or if that Uranus stuff is very active this month with interruptions, disruptions, having to pivot around stuff, um, I don't know. Like there's some other things in the sky that seem like they could help. So there's that. That was another big thought that I had. Uh, I think I'm going to make a whole video about Saturn and Neptune. People are starting to come out with their Saturn Neptune content. I will be another one. Um, so I'll save my thoughts on that. Maybe I'll bring it up at some point. Uh, yeah, I guess last thing, let's talk about Neptune and this last Aries eclipse. Yeah. So Neptune, I didn't talk about it much last month. They're moving into Aries. And so the first thing that I like to consider is what happens when a planet is no longer in a place? What does it mean for Pisces to have Neptune leaving there? Now it's temporary. It's just going to be a preview of what it's like. They'll be back in October, October 22nd, they're coming back. So from March 30th to October 22nd, we're going to have Neptune out of Pisces. So that's for your Pisces house topics, less confusion, less uncertainty. Um, there's also going to be, Neptune can be very artistic and spiritual. That is also leaving Pisces. Now, Pisces kind of can do that on their own. So I don't think it's going to be that noticeable. Um, but like right now, for instance, with my money, I've had a hard time with boundaries in some ways. I think it's going to be easier once Neptune gets out of there. I'm not going to feel like, you know, so kind of one with everyone that I overextend myself, which isn't good either in the long run. I think it's going to be easier once Neptune gets out of Pisces for us to hold steady boundaries there. And yeah, just have a better handle on that area of life. Now Neptune is moving into Aries, and so Aries gets that infusion of artistic, spiritual prowess. And why I say artistic for Neptune, I think it's worth explaining. I've never really explained it before. I always just throw it in there. Neptune dissolves the separations between things. It dissolves the boundaries and borders. And I think a lot of what creativity is connections, making connections. Venus is a connection planet. Venus is a creativity planet. I think some ways Neptune also with that ability to just like put anything together and figure something out with it. It's like no longer are we kind of held in this mental prison of like, well, that can't possibly go with this. We can't possibly put sriracha on whatever. Yes, we can, and we will. And so very creative, in that way. That's what comes into Aries, whatever the house topics are that are in Aries. So if you're in Aries rising, I mean, this is going to be a bit more diffuse. It is you, but it's also your general surroundings a bit. So maybe your general surroundings get more spiritual, artistic. Maybe you get more spiritual or artistic. But it is also uncertainty and confusion. And so you might have to try harder for the next 14 years. Sorry, to over communicate, compensate, I guess. The antidote for Neptune, I think, really, in a lot of ways, is Mercury, is Gemini and Virgo stuff. Um, so, in some ways, paying attention to details, asking questions, um, debating. Sometimes that's necessary. So, for the last 14 years or however long Neptune has been in Pisces, I have had to be extra careful with my second house stuff. And I really did for that whole time. I had to be very careful. I saw the problems that came up when I wasn't careful. So it is what it is. There's good things with Neptune. There's difficult things with Neptune. Both of them are going to be moving from a few different areas of life to some new areas of life. Also interesting, now Virgo no longer has to deal with an opposition from Neptune. So when Neptune leaves Pisces, it's also going to benefit our Virgo part of our chart in terms of not having a soggy mess, you know? Uh, but now Libra, they are going to get that oppositional ray from Neptune. So it's not just in Aries. This is also going to have ramifications for any of the signs that Neptune is now going to be hitting by a different angle. And that I will not get into those weeds. So for me, Neptune, I guess to be transparent, Neptune's going to be going into my third, my communication place. So if I start to get unclear, extra unclear, I'm already unclear like half of the time because my Mercury is with Neptune. It's hard to be clear. Uh, if it gets worse, y'all know why. If I start to get really spiritual extra, we already are. Okay. So let's see. The last thing, is there anything else about that? Yeah, I think that's all I'll say about that. Okay, last thing about old business. I kind of glossed over it on the last forecast, but the eclipse that we're having in 2 days on the 29th, our last eclipse in Aries of that year and a half that we've had the eclipse axes across Aries and Libra. Um, and I really want to relate back to Cancer, actually. So we're having this really interesting mutual reception. I can't remember if I talked about this last month, but I definitely didn't like get into it if I even did mention it. Uh, there's an exchange happening here between Aries and Cancer. And so I think whatever the great beginnings, endings, restarts we're having in Aries, And those house topics are going to directly relate or involve in some way the house topics of Cancer, where Mars is. Mars is in charge of this eclipse, and they're imbuing whatever's going on in Cancer with this. So, for instance, if you are me, if you're an Aquarius rising, this is happening for Aquarius rising. Whoop, that's not helpful. In their third and sixth, if I can get it up. So it's going to be happening in third and sixth house. And so for me, I'm literally going back to the gym after like breaking my back, lifting something heavy around Thanksgiving time. Yeah, I wrecked my back and I'm finally getting back to the gym. It's been a very Mars story, but it's going to involve a lot of short distance travel, my literal mobility, my regular activities of the third and the sixth. It's very tied together and with my health, all that stuff. Um, for let's say you are let me just give you another example. Maybe you're a Taurus rising. Maybe this is going to have to do with your third house a little bit as well. So great beginnings and endings with 12th house, mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, activism. Maybe so there's great beginnings, great endings with communication. Also short distance travel, doing things in your communities. Could be a community involvement dealing with some 12th house challenges or helping other people through 12th house challenges. Um, so yeah, try to squish those house topics together for yourself. If I would have been on my horoscope game this month with which I did take a month off, so thanks. I probably should have made one about that, but if you can't figure it out, comment below and I'll help. So okay, I wanted to point that out with the eclipse, probably going to relate to Cancer. Okay. I think now we're ready to actually get into April. We're going to talk about April. Ooh, charity highlight. Last thing, last thing. Air horns, air horns. If you are in America, the Bail Project is a great charity right now because I've been concerned about who's going to jail and for what reasons, and now I'm extra concerned. So, Bail Project is a great one to help out with if you can in that way. Doctors Without Borders, more of a global thing. There's so many places in the world that need help right now. It's not just one, but that is a charity, Doctors Without Borders, that helps a lot of them. So if you're able to, that's great. And then I think that's it. Okay, planets are rising. Uh, Let me see if there's any comments in the chat. Oh, did I lose my own? Hold on, sorry, y'all. Technical difficulties. Do, 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 do. Hello, everyone. There's the chat. Welcome. All right. Yeah, let's get going. Um, there's a 20-second delay between me and y'all. So if you ask questions, I will get to it eventually. Okay. Yeah, and if I skip over a day that you want me to look at, just let me know. Okay, here we are, April 1st. Planets getting some distance from the sun. Neptune is in Aries. Saturn and the gang are doing all their stuff. So that's how we enter the month. Um, I don't have much until the 4th. The 4th and the 5th could be considered maybe mind your own business days. Uh, the moon with Mars is fine. And if you have a channel for your energy, for any kind of irritability that could come up under this, depending on who you are, especially if you're a day baby like myself, where Mars can be a bit more of that. I think the moon is usually able to handle it. And, there's that. Why I'm a little bit extra skeptical is because we have been coming off of this Mars Chiron business. Um, Aries has just been very activated in general. So, in some ways, this could be a little of a tender day, a day to be gentle with yourself and others on April 4th, April 5th. So, I want to just point that out. Not a good day to get into keyboard warring online if you can avoid it. On the 5th, we have that moon conjunct Mars, but another thing that it's like kind of a medium, like a threat level yellow, kind of mind your own business day, because we do have, these very sober, uh, intellectual kind of things happening up here in what is usually soupy, what is usually very emotional. But there's Mercury and Saturn up here, so they're sending down some beams of uh, a little bit more order or rationality potentially to what could be a bit messy. It could be some days on the 4th and the 5th of April of having delicate conversations, of untangling heartstrings with yourself internally or with others. That's all a very real possibility. And then my next important thing is on the 7th, we get our Mercury station. So Mercury's going to station direct. So now this is one of our first vibe shifts of the month. I feel like we get this station, and then on the 12th, we get Venus station. On the 17th of April, we get Mars switching signs. So there's like some dominoes that are going to switch the vibe here a bit. Even though on the 7th, Mercury's stationing direct, they're still very slow. They're with Rahu. Usually, I would say they're struggling in Pisces, but they get a few of those space points back because they've got this nice exchange going on with Jupiter. So they're doing somewhat okay. There's benefics here. Uh, so it's not the worst Mercury in the world. But yeah, give it some time. Like, don't expect all of your plans, details, buying and selling, all that stuff to shake out on the 7th. It's going to take a little bit of time. Give it another week or two. Mercury is going to build up speed slowly now. When we get to the 25th of April, then Mercury is out of their post-retrograde stuff. At that point, by the 25th of April, we'll have gotten Mercury retracing all of their steps and getting back to that, what was it? Looks like 7 or 8 degrees, 8 degrees where they originally stationed. They will have retraced all their steps. They'll have gone through and resolved whatever else they need to post-retrograde. So this is part of also saying the same thing about why we need to wait a week or two, even after Mercury stations direct on the 7th. On the 7th, we also get that second Venus-Saturn conjunction. So we're going to see them come together. I mean, that's already building now. It can be really beautiful in terms of committed partnerships. When Saturn and Venus come together, sometimes it can be, let's say you're looking around your romance life and everything's great. Then what this might be is, wow, look at this. We really have the potential to build something beautiful that could last over a very long period of time. Like that's very Venus, Saturn in Pisces. So it can be that kind of, yeah, just long-term view in a really committed way. At worst, it is the beer goggles coming off and being like, oh no, what's this? We should do something about that. Um, so yeah, that's going to peak on the 7th. Don't be too hard on yourself and each other, but also be real. We might be having Mercury's here. We might be having some come to Jesus talks or whatever you call them. Uh, on the 7th, we also have the moon, who is, I mean, overall getting a nice sextile from Jupiter. This really invigorating uh, trine from a nice sun. So there's these, I don't know, like I know, like I said, what is it, the 4th and the 5th? A little more gentle with each other, with yourselves. But I do think like the 6th and the 7th, the fire in the air energy will be a bit more uplifting. So a bit more lively, a bit more uplifting, even though there's some of these other somber notes happening. So yeah, things brighten up or get a bit more busy on the 6th and the 7th. And then we get into a lunar benefic enclosure on the 9th. So first lunar benefic enclosure of the month. I mean, it's happening in, Is it really happening there? Yeah, it is. So we're still getting this this opposition from Saturn. So April 9th, the lunar benefic enclosure, it's not like the best one, but it's decent. It's decent. It's good enough. And the exact times on that. So a nice little window if you need to get something done or try to do a thing and have a better result. And that's good, or have a more easeful time doing it. That's going to be Central Time on April 9th, 7:04 p.m. and throughout the night until the next day at 9:38 a.m. on the April 10th. So more the evening on the 9th into the 10th. What day of the week is that going to be? That's a Wednesday. Now for the rest of the world, that's not me in Central Time. I've got Universal Time on the 10th. It starts at 12:04 in the morning and it lasts until 2:38 p.m. And then some more global Eastern time zones. You're gonna have the good patch of weather more Thursday night. And so like if you're in Australia, I mean, you might actually be asleep for some of it, depending or Japan or something over there. It might be in the middle of your night. But yeah, take advantage the 9th and the 10th. We've got this nice little patch of weather. I do have a link below to the calculator that I use on astroseek.com. So if you want to put in your time zone and get the exact times for you about when this nice little window is, check out that link below and it'll let you change your time zone. Um, okay, then on the 12th, we're going to get Venus stationing direct. Uh, Yeah, and I guess amongst all the things, I didn't really mention Mercury being with Rahu. Mercury's also going to be with Rahu, obviously. And so, it's like the same kind of vibes, like things getting out of control because there's too much of it, too much responsibility, too much relating, too many expectations. Now with Mercury, it's like too much communication, too many thoughts, um, too much. So if you're noticing that overwhelm, know that it's going to feel better by the end of April. But yeah, we might have to just move a little extra slowly first part of April, look over things twice, do a little extra diligence. Again, it helps out so much that Jupiter and Mercury have this mutual reception. That's very, very helpful. That helps whatever Mercury is doing turn out better than we would expect otherwise. But still, Rahu's around, you know, don't be afraid to over communicate with people this month, just in case. April 12th, though, we get Venus stationing direct. So, matters of Venus and Mercury as well. So like the house topics that are with Gemini, Taurus, Libra, Virgo, all of that stuff is moving pretty slow. So like for this Leo rising, their 11th house of friends, 10th house of career, second house of money, third house of community, all that stuff's moving slow in April. It'll start to speed up more, the pace. As long as you're not like, if you're Leo rising and you're not overwhelmed with your eighth house, that's where the focus will really probably be for the first part of April. And then more and more and more as April progresses into May, I think we're going to get some of these other areas of life becoming more of the focus. So that speed really matters for other parts of the chart, just to show you that. They're going to be slow until May. So let's see. Yeah, they're in the same set of degrees. Yeah, until May. Okay. What else about Venus stationing direct? They will be out of their post-retrograde phase by May 14th. So now Venus stations direct on the 12th, and they're going to be retracing their steps from the 12th of April all the way till the 14th of May. So they're going to spend the next month retracing steps into Aries. And so with Venus retrograde stories that are happening right now, any challenges that you're working through with Venus things that you value, ethics, justice, relational stuff, beauty, and art project, love, romance, all that stuff. Vices, if you're working through all of that, give yourself until like, I mean, give yourself longer than April 12th because some of that is still being worked out between April 12th and May 14th. So these stories really do carry us into May. So we're going to have to be extra patient. I'm having to be so patient over here. I just need to sit on my little hands. And I then have a Libra full moon. Uh, so let's actually go to there. So we've got Libra at 23 degrees. That's where the moon will be. Chiron and the sun are exactly opposite of them. So that adds a little flair. Demoted. This full moon just got a demotion. No, I shouldn't be like that. It could be healing, it could be a culmination in something that's healing. It could be a culmination or a peaking in coming into that more healed side of the wound, if it's possible, or into that teacher, mentor, healer side of that whole equation. It doesn't have to just be being in the ouchies. Although a lot of times it is with Chiron, but especially the older you get, like if you're not in your 20s anymore, if you just lived a lot of life, sometimes you don't have to wait until like that Chiron return when you're in your 40s to to have a better time with Chiron stuff. All to say, uh, if there are some ouchies with this Venus station, with this full moon, or just some recurrent challenge that's just very prominent that you're like, yep, I see it, there it is. Um, yeah, that might be the nature of this full moon. So be kind with yourself and others on that day. That looks like another one where the emergency room might be classically full. Um, don't want to make anyone worried, but move a little slower if you can. If there's a lot of energy or busyness happening around you, that might be your sign to move a little bit more slowly. We are getting this overcoming. This is what I didn't like. I didn't notice the Chiron thing when I was making my notes earlier, which is probably why I just went on a rant about it because I just saw it for the first time. I had my eyes. I was already giving side eye to this Mars overcoming square. Now, if you are a night baby, if you were born in the night with the sun below the horizon, I am less, you know, threat level comes down a bit from orange to yellow, green with this one. It could just be a busy, active time for a lot of us and very busy and active with the cardinal signs. So those areas of life. So for this like Libra rising, it would be like a lot of busyness with them, their relationships, their career, a lot of busyness, activeness all at once, mid-April. For some of us, if there is irritability, if there's conflict, if there's tension, doing your best around April 12th to have some kind of outlet for that. And if there's like time to have a meeting, if there's like a meeting you have to have or whatever, uh, I mean, this is a Saturday, I guess. I wouldn't have the meeting this day. This is kind of a mind your own business day, honestly. If I could, you know, assign some, I would assign this one. Uh, did I write anything good about it? Oh yeah, it is overcome by a trine from Jupiter. Thank fluff. Oh my goodness. So there is that, the moon's about to run into Mars, which is the applying aspect after this. One of its previous ones was a trine from Jupiter. So I guess, go slow moving into things on the 11th. Don't want anyone to run into anything too foul on the 12th, but it's not as bad as it could be. Jupiter helps a lot by being in that trine, but they themselves are only able to give modest help. Yeah, several uncomfortable configurations. For electional astrology, I put a note, like if you're choosing a time to do so, if this is for like the astrology nerds who are trying to pick exact times to do good things, I didn't really like Leo rising, Sag rising, or Aquarius rising as hours of the day that to do stuff. So for if that's helpful for anyone. Yeah, I don't know. I don't love it. Let's see what the chat has to say. Rogue Rumorgerd. Love it. Um, I've been on the internet for so long. There are these old memes that I laugh about that I wonder if anyone knows about. Anyway, if there are eclipses happening on your luminaries, on your sun or your moon or your ascendant or anything that's like a big important point for you, then it'll be a louder thing. It's like, yeah, it will be more significant. Like it'll be louder. You'll have a front row seat for it. That's what I always say. That's about all I can say, I think. So good luck. Hello, Lau. Nice to see you. Yeah, part of my Mercury retrograde thing was being a classic imperialist American and forgetting that like other people don't change time zones when America changes time zones. So it screwed up a few things. So that was a mistake that I hopefully won't make again. Uh, all right. Thanks for joining, everyone. Uh, what else? I don't think I have anything else about the 12th. I don't really love that full moon. It looks really hmm. Is there any good things I could say about it? Ah, because some people are gonna like be born on this day, like, they might be alchemizing a lot of tender topics. Sometimes I see difficult placements in a chart, and it ends up being that person helping other people with those types of problems, depending on what is hooked up in their chart. So it doesn't always have to be bad. That's why I think that's part of also why I say if there's like what I more used to commonly refer to as mind your own business days, what they really are is just days to be more gentle, caring, kind to yourself and the world around you. Because if the weather is like, let's say it's raining out or like when it's snowing out and everyone's cars are getting stuck in the road and stuck in the ditch, yeah, like take care of yourself and others more when the weather is really bad outside or like icky, because some of us are probably going to be dealing with some fallout from that. So that's kind of what's behind that. It's not, it sounds very un-Buddhist in terms of minding your own business. Like, I just don't want to deal with this. It's very un-Buddhist. Buddhism wants you to see reality clearly and deal with it, not to escape, into a cave. That's not what they're doing. But yeah, I think the better way of saying it is on days like the 12th, be extra kind to yourself. Oh, and let's do a little philosophical digression because I saw a really reasonable tweet. Well, not a tweet. I'm not on Twitter anymore. It was on Threads, and it was this idea that kindness is not going to fix our oppressive systems. Kindness is not going to save us from white supremacy, which I hear the spirit of that statement, and it's absolutely true. But my one caveat is that I think it's a conflation of kindness with niceness. I think the word kind has been hijacked and misunderstood. And usually I would just let it go and like find a different word. But I don't have a different word. Like that word was very specific and good for that purpose. So, niceness is complicity. Niceness is conflict avoidant and doesn't want to make anyone comfortable by telling them that they're doing something that's hateful and harmful, or telling people that something is wrong, speaking, using their voice to stop harm. Like when that stuff isn't happening, that's when someone's being nice. They don't want to cause a stir, right? Yeah, that's bad. That's not good. Kindness is not that. It is it is not afraid of confrontation. It will say what is true in a timely way, in a patient way, in a loving way, such that change can actually happen. It is the power of love that no one wants to do when it's actually time to depend on the power of love. Loving. And that's another thing I could, well, what about the word loving? And this is something I've heard Sharon Salzberg talk about in my teachers, trying to transmit even these ideas of loving kindness to the West, which most Western people are like, whatever. Because what about times when we need, to really harshly, even, in some cases, and then this is where I get into a philosophical quandary. I don't need the chart about killing, when is it acceptable or not from a philosophical standpoint. I'm not going to get into all of that today, but I will say that that kindness is being radically honest, radically loving, and it doesn't feel good. That's the other thing is the word loving doesn't really work either in the West because people feel like loving should is this feel good feeling. It's like when you have butterflies in your tummy. It's like, no, that's dopamine. That's not love. That's attachment and yum yums. That's not love. Love is hard and it doesn't feel good most, I think a lot of the time in kind of this material world sense. When you do it, then you get to feel the open-heartedness and all of that. But it's not easy. Maybe that's the way of saying it. So all to say, uh, kindness, when I'm talking about being kind to each other out there, there is this nuance. I don't mean, oh, be nice to each other and avoid conflict on these days and don't do protests on these days or just protect, don't like I'm not saying to just cloister yourself and coddle yourself. Like when I say be kind to each other, it means to be radically honest and radically loving, even if that means having discomfort and confrontation, but doing it in a way, I think here's the key, not furthering the cycle of hate, not furthering the cycle of hatred, which is so often, even when I'm trying, like I've failed in the past. One time I tried to call out some really problematic behavior in terms of our community, just infighting and attacking each other. And I said, we got to be more patient with each other. And I got called a pacifist Karen or whatever. It's not what I meant. I was misunderstood. So, when I'm talking about being kind, it's not about being passive, but it is about being patient sometimes, more patient than we feel like. Because like I'm feeling a sense of urgency. I don't feel like I got time for patience. But when you notice someone being patient in the face of hatred, that is someone who is being kind and loving. But that doesn't mean they're not calling something out or calling something in or any of those things. So I just want to be clear on that, like that everyone understands. I feel like I'm maybe over explaining, and I try not to over explain because I'm a recovering people pleaser. At the same time, it's like if I don't get into some of these nuances with my language, I am going to be misunderstood. So that was a messy digression. There was a lot of little bits in there. When I'm talking about bad weather and being kind to each other, that's what that's all about. Okay, back at it. Philosophical digression complete. Um, Let me see if I rustled up any comments. Juno Station Direct. Oh, they're going to. Yeah, I like to follow Juno too. I forget about them, but they do tell stories I've found. Yeah, yeah. Natasha's right on. Uh, I know what I'm not going to get into the weeds of that, but right on. Okay, let's see. I think I'm going to talk about the 13th. Moon square Mars ends at 8:54 a.m. Central Time. So let's look at that. Yeah, I wanted to see when is the moon going to get away from this square with Mars? So Sunday morning into Sunday afternoon, Universal Time, into Sunday evening in the more globally Eastern time zones on the 13th. That's when you're getting out of this more difficult patch of weather. And then we're going to get the Moon Mars mutual reception, which I've been finding time and time again. Moon Mars mutual receptions have been better than just like normal Moon and Scorpio days. I've been finding that there's some really like constructive, successful things that can go on. And like the last time we just had one of these this month's, those astronauts got back. And so it just was like very evocative of going through a really uncomfortable, difficult situation, these planets being in these places where they're not supported. It's very incongruent with their natures, just like astronauts in space. People shouldn't be in space. There's no oxygen up there. How do we get them through our atmosphere going a billion miles an hour? But we were able to do it. And they came back finally. And that was great. So I thought that was a really cute way that the last Moon Mars mutual reception happened. We're going to have another one on the 13th of April, and that'll extend into the 14th of April and the 15th, 2.5 days. Very watery days. We've got a lot of water happening. We've got 5 water planets in the middle of April. So if we are feeling a lot of things, sensing a lot of things, maybe we don't have words for stuff. Maybe we're much more working on nonverbal body language, art, kind of improv. Yeah, that's more of the vibe with water. Very connecty as well. If you are someone who is in any kind of fields where there's a lot of connection or transference that can happen, so any of the counseling fields, healthcare fields, wellness fields, or even anything where you just have like a one-on-one client kind of interaction, one-on-one conversations with people. I find that when the sky gets really watery, that connection happens a lot easier, for better or for worse. It can be really great. You're connecting with people on levels that you didn't even know were possible, kind of being like, yeah, I don't even understand what you just said, but I understand what you just said. I'm picking up what you're putting down, even though I couldn't repeat it back. That's very water. So yeah, take advantage of that on the 14th, 15th. At the same time, you may have to use more energetic boundaries, more energetic hygiene around 13th, 14th, 15th of April, especially if you're on those helping fields where we need to have that healthy separation. It might be prudent to do extra hygiene around energy stuff mid-April when we have a lot of this water. Actually, all of April. Just energetic hygiene alert for all of April. Let's just do the whole month. But um, yeah, especially the 14th, 15th. Uh, And we get on the 16th, Mercury entering into Aries. Um, I'm sorry, I have to go back. Something came into my brain on the kindness thing. I have to say one more thing about it. Because I think a lot of people in the West, especially again, they think about kindness and they're like, wasn't that supposed to feel good? Like, so how can having a confrontation be kind? And it's because you're trying to prevent suffering and end suffering. You're trying to prevent it and suffering. And so by doing these things that are potentially uncomfortable, like this is where you break up with someone instead of leading them on. Is it a fun operation? No. Do people cry? Yeah. Is it nice? Is it kind? See, I almost did it. Is it kinder than lying to them? Yes. Yeah. If you're lying, it's not kind. So that's a maybe a better example that more people can relate with in terms of what I mean when I say kind. Okay, I'm not going to talk about it anymore. Thank you, thank you. It's just that like it's not the only solution. I'm not saying we don't need to protest harshly and do other, you know, things that beyond just like, love and light. Like that's not what I'm saying. But also we need that's one of the tools in the toolbox. It's one of the tools in the toolbox. Um, so I need people to know that it's not the same as nice because I need that word. We need that word. Um, Speaking of words, Mercury's going into Aries again, and this is going to be on the 16th of March. No, that's not right. Sorry. April. 16th of April. Uh, I had already said over communication is great this month. Mercury's with Rahu. Mercury's also near Neptune. When they're in these first few degrees of Aries, they're with Neptune. It's really powerful, potent weather for all that planning, using your imagination to plan, uh, inspired actions, getting some intellectual rigor behind it, getting some plans behind it. So there's a lot of cool things that can be done with Neptune here, bringing Mercury and Neptune together at the same time with like filling out forms, showing up at the right place at the right time. Just make sure you're extra on notice on like April 16th or 17th. I'm going to be putting Neptune alert in my calendar and just reminding me that, if someone doesn't show up to a session in the first 5 minutes, I'm just going to send them a nice little email nudge and be like, a member, and not, just doing those little extra helping things on the 16th and 17th. And then we're going to get Mercury back into the fast zone, fast lane, a little more dried out, less emotional, able to take actions based on thought processes versus more of that dreaming emotional quality that Mercury has in Pisces. That's on the 16th. And again, on the 20, when I say the 25th, that's when they get out of their post-retrograde time. Then on the 17th, we're going to have a big vibe shift. We're going to finally get Mars out of Cancer and into a new place. So the last time Mars was in Leo, that was more around November, December, January, December, January. They stationed retrograde at 6 degrees of Leo. They eventually went back into Cancer. And they've been there for about 4 months, three and some change. Now, Mars in Cancer, not as able to easily, readily take actions directly, be direct, be decisive. They still can, and they do, but it's going to be easier when Mars gets into Leo on the 17th of April. Actions can also become a little bit more performative. So for what it's worth, these first few days of Mars and Leo, just checking like motivations, checking that, that the actions are happening from a thoughtful place, not just from just pure fire and wanting to release energy. Because in fire, Mars much more might want to release energy in a physical, active way versus writing about it or thinking about it or expelling that energy in other ways or talking about it. Fire signs are very action oriented, very embodied. So embodying that action, just making sure whenever we get into a new place, we get a vibe check on that before we run off into the sunset with it. So that'll be, I think, very enlivening, invigorating. And then we have a few days, the 17th, 18th, 19th. We've got a mutual reception, another exchange between Sun and Mars. And this feels like some jet fuel for a few days. So really the pace picks up 17th, 18th, 19th. And I think it's a really, a potent few days to take actions, get things done. They're coming out of a square, moving into a trine. They're in a trine by signs. So it just feels really constructive, invigorating, which might be nice after having so much watery weather. Now we're having a few days where we get a lot of fire. 17th, 18th, 19th. I probably should be talking about that square leading up to it. Let's see. Yeah, it almost happens in Cardinal. The actual square itself between the Sun and Mars perfects once they get into the fixed signs. Um, Sun square, or sorry, I think I might have just said Saturn. Sun square Mars. Sun square Mars, very potent, very invigorating. It's these planets of vitality and leadership that are coming together in a very strong formation. So April 17, 18, 19th, we might feel very compelled to act. We might feel very leadershipy. Use that wave, use that energy as you will. And then we get into more fixed territory. Then the pace slows down. The 19th, 20th of April, things start to settle a bit. Oh, and I forgot a lunar benefic enclosure on the 17th. That is universal time 4:11 p.m. on April 17th. That's a Thursday. So Thursday afternoon, universal time. That'll be more like morning for Americas. Uh, and that nice weather on the 17th of April, it goes until the 18th, the next day on Friday. 4:40 in the morning, universal time. And so that's going to be more into the evening, into the next morning on the 18th, more globally east. I know there's a lot of energy there in the 17th, 18th, 19th of April. And then we also have this nice little blip of weather on the 17th, 18th. Then the sun enters into Taurus on the 19th. And that's a vibe shift. Much more stabilizing, consistent, slower paced, thoughtful, careful Taurus. And then goodbye, exalted sun. Always nice to have an Aries sun. But for what it's worth, when the sun gets into Taurus, they're going to be ruled by an exalted planet as well. So we're still going to get a nice chain of resourcing for the sun, even after they leave that exaltation. There is a bit of a kind of mind your own business quality on the 19th, I guess. So when we look at the moon, moon is coming in on the 20th into Pluto and Mars. So it's just that intensity. There's this T-square. So we were talking about the sun and Mars. The moon really locks into this on the 20th. And if you have an outlet for that, if you've got like a project that you're doing, something that you need to get done, a group project even, like this can be, again, a very powerful time. At the same time, if there is like tensions or if it gets the energy gets into more of the irritable level on like the 19th, 20th, with the moon coming into that, it just that might be the vibe for the day. And things should chill the following day on the 21st. We're going to get the moon past all of that. And then stuff will chill out a little bit. So more Monday, the 21st, we're getting the moon past all of that. This is our Sun Rahu, or sorry, Saturn Rahu conjunction. So we've got Saturn and Rahu finally coming together. I know it perfects on the 21st. We're building into this all month long. So this is that expansion of responsibility, duties, obligations, burdens. All of that might feel a little extra heavy in April, especially leading up to the 21st. This is boundaries, healthy boundaries, but even maybe bordering along too many boundaries sometimes. Sometimes we keep people out too much. If you're noticing any of that in April, that could be Saturn and Rahu. So yeah, things in some areas of the sky loosen up a little bit, lighten up a little bit. But we are, I mean, all of April, we're having this very Saturn and Pisces note. There is a malefic enclosure on the 20th and 21st as well. So lunar malefic enclosure, that's going to start on the 20th on Sunday night, 12:20 p.m. or sorry, Sunday afternoon, 12:20 p.m. until 8:35 p.m. So it's about 8 hours. Usually there's other lunar malefic and benefic enclosures in the month, but some of them are really short. I don't usually tell you about those, and some of them are softer and they're just not as potent, so I don't talk about those. But some of these longer ones, these 8 hour chunks, I might mention. So anyway, for universal time on the 20th, April 20th, 5:20 p.m. until throughout the night until the next morning in the wee hours, 1:35 a.m. is when this difficult patch ends. So you might sleep through some of that depending on what country you're in. Sometimes a lunar malefic enclosure. Let me show you what I mean. So the moon is going to be in between. It must be after it gets past Saturn there. When the moon is in between the rays of Saturn and Mars, that is a large flavor of what the moon is going to be experiencing. And so when the moon is separating from this sextile from Saturn, moving toward an opposition with Mars, that's going to feel a little bit more crunchy. Sometimes we're doing difficult or burdensome things, uncomfortable things that need to get done. Sometimes that's what's going on during a lunar malefic enclosure. Um, so yeah, it doesn't have to be bad, but it's not like the most comfortable, easeful weather at all if I'm going to choose to do something. So again, that's going to be earlier on the day on the 20th into later on the 20th into the 21st, globally east. Difficult little patch of weather. And then on the 22nd, things get a little better with Moon running into Jupiter. So we get to experience a nice air trine between those planets. So maybe a bit more bubbly light energy on April 22nd, 23rd. And then we get our final Venus-Saturn conjunction on the 24th. So, I mean, they've been hanging around, I don't know, like on the 24th, being they've been so close all month. I don't think we're going to get bonked over the head with like, here's all the Venus and Saturn stuff. But certainly this is going to be a peaking of it. The third week of April, there's a lot of perfections of things that have been building up. So then I'm very curious to see what that last week of April is going to be like once we're coming off from all of that. On the 25th of April, we get, again, Mercury out of their post-retrograde time. On the 26th of April, kind of a spicy little connection with Chiron, Mars. So being nice to yourself on the 26th, uh, kind to yourself. After all of that, and I just conflated the words. You see how easy it is. Okay. Taurus New Moon. Then on the 27th, this feels like probably one of the more chill. I know it's square Mars, but it's like there's maybe some busyness or some activity happening in Leo, but there is this very calm, nourishing, supportive energy coming down upon Mars. So I'm looking forward to this new moon. I think it's going to be probably one of the more favorable, pleasant ones that we will have had in a while by the end of April. So I'm looking forward to it. The last aspect right before is the moon applying to that square with Mars. So we're going to feel that before. We're going to have the new moon, and then right after it's a sextile with Saturn. So almost as if to say, here's this kind of prodding thing, or here's this action that I am going to take, or something that's spurring me into action. And then Saturn is like, that's fine, but maybe here's some caveats, or here's some limitations or constrictions, some soft ones to whatever those actions were going to be. It doesn't feel like it's in a way that is totally blocking, like being an obstacle. It just feels like more of a course correction, maybe than anything, that Saturn sextile after the new moon. So whatever we're getting started on at the end of April, whatever new things we're embarking on, especially in the Taurus parts of our chart, just knowing that it might get off to a little bit of a slow start. It is Taurus new moon after all, but then knowing too that one of the next aspects the moon is going to experience is Saturn. Just speaks to some more of that slowness or carefulness or deliberateness as this new thing is beginning. Nice little Venus moon sextile then as well as with Saturn. So, the fact that Venus is there, it's not all difficult. It's like, here's maybe some constrictions, some limitations, but here's some help. Here's some good things about it. So yeah, stamp of approval on Taurus new moon at the end of the month. And then finally, Venus entering Aries, re-entering Aries on the 30th. So this is the Venus that we've been having for the last few weeks. So we have a fresh recall in our memories of what Venus in Aries is like. Much more fast-paced with relating, social stuff, having fun, yum-yums coming in fast, fun, cool stuff coming in fast, I have had at least one of those things. Um, I went from not having a fire pit to having a fire pit in like half a day, and it happened so fast, and it was very Venus and Aries. It was perfect. Um, so yeah, we're back to that by the end of April. So April's going to be a bit more soupy, emotional, emo. And then by the end of April, we're going to get a lot of fire back, and we'll still have that fire Mars. So I am looking forward to Venus then wrapping up her final steps of the journey, which again, by May 14th, then Venus will be all done retracing these steps of Aries. And hopefully, a lot of what we're dealing with now in March and April, by the time we get to May, going to be more on the rear view mirror. Going to feel like, okay, we've got that sorted out, and we're on to the next set of things. Uh, so yeah, I think that's about it. Um, I'm going to see in the chat if there's any questions or concerns. There does not appear to be any. Last call if anyone wants to look at any dates that I did not go over. And thank you everyone for joining me. Um, I don't think I have any other announcements, just same stuff as always. Doing my sessions with clients, doing the newsletter. If you like how I talked about things today, schedule a session. The forecasting sessions are really good around your birth time or sorry, your birth date. So if you have a birthday coming up or if you recently had a birthday, like in the last month, that's kind of the best time to do a forecasting reading. Birth time or sorry, birth chart readings, always a good time to do those. Uh, I do tutoring, mentoring. If you are also starting a practice like this and you want to know what I have done, I'm an open book in those mentoring sessions. All of it's on my website. Check it out, www.aligninglightastrology.com. I also have a sliding scale. If you see some prices on things and it's not going to work, send me an email, aligninglight@gmail.com. And I make a unique discount code for you based on how much you want to pay on the sliding scale. And you can book like normal. So I'm getting a little new streamlined way of handling sliding scale readings, but email me and that's how we can get that started. I don't want funds to get in the way of astrology. And yeah, I think that's it. Thanks everyone for your time. It doesn't look like there's any last things. Oh, hello, Easy. It's nice to see you. Hello, Cosmic Girl. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I love seeing where people are from too, because it helps motivate me to make sure I'm putting all the time zones in that I need to be putting in and not just being central time zone. So thank you, everyone. All right. Have a good April. Good luck with everything. Um, hang in there with the uncertainty and watch out for my next video that's going to be a bit more about that with Saturn and Neptune. I'm going to talk about that conjunction because that conjunction, last thing, it's really going to start like getting into adherence territory very soon in May, basically. We're going to get Saturn within 3 degrees of Neptune. And when a planet gets within 3 degrees of another planet, we start to feel it the most strongly. So this adherence period of time really stretches May, June, July, uh, geez, all through August, September. Finally, in like the quarter four, we get a little bit of a break from it, but it's pretty much online the next year. And I think I'm gonna make some rising sign videos about that. Yeah, I think that's my final point. All right. Thank you, everyone. I hope that you have a good month ahead and send me any questions or leave comments below.